Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about the Sino-hybrids, namely Utahsinoraptor and Allosinosaurus. This week we're having Sino, and although yesterday I've suggested we not go for Sino for this week, if anyone are interested or if they really want to go for Sinoceratops, because there are reasons to go for Sinoceratops. For example, if you're more of a casual player, the Sino hybrids are relatively easy to obtain in comparison to the Anki hybrids. The Anki hybrids are very, very hard to obtain, and especially their super hybrids, they're insanely hard to obtain. If you do have trouble getting those, the Sinoceratops hybrids are still an option, but they are definitely less powerful in many ways. Let's first go over Sinoceratops. So Sinoceratops is an epic ceratopsian that's in the same line as Triceratops Gen 2, all of those. Sinoceratops is a local 1 spawn. It's an all-day spawn, so it isn't that hard to find in comparison to the day-only epic spawns. But still, it's a local 1 spawn, and if you don't live in local 1 or don't live near local 1, you probably won't see them too often. But anyways, Sinoceratops' main role is just to fuse for these two hybrids down here. Utahsinoraptor and Allosinosaurus itself isn't that useful. So first of all, you need Sinoceratops to be at level 15. So that's quite a difficult task, I'd say, since it is not the easiest dino to come across, and it's not the easiest one to dart either, although it is relatively easy in comparison to the other epics. So if you do see them often, you probably could get quite a few DNA racked up on this thing. So first, the Utahsinoraptor, it fuses with Utahraptor at level 15, and Allosinosaurus, which fused with Allosaurus at level 15. So Utah is a all-day global spawn. You probably saw so many of these already. Allosinosaurus is fused with a level 15 Allo and a level 15 Sino, which Allo is a anytime spawn in local 4. So if you come across local 4, and even at restaurants, it spawns at restaurants too, and any other local. So Allo isn't that hard to come across. Although it is quite hard to dart, to be honest. It's harder than a lot of epics to dart, but as common as it is in local 4, it shouldn't be that difficult to get. So the difficult part for these hybrids are obviously Sinoceratops. So let's go over both of these stats first. So looking at Allosinosaurus, it has 4.5k health, 15% armor, damage, it's 1.4k, speed 106, and it has a 20% crit chance. So one common theme you'd see with both these hybrids are that they have a bit of armor, which their other components don't have thanks to Sinoceratops. And at Utahsinoraptor, it has 3k health, 15% armor, 1.35k, is that how you say it? Yeah. Damage, and 126 speed, and only 5% crit. So here you can see the major differences, which Allosinosaurus inherits that really high base health from Allosaurus. They both have the same armor from Sinoceratops. Allosinosaurus has a bit more damage from the Tyrannosaur archetype, but it actually has the lowest damage of all the Tyrannosaurs. So that isn't really helping it a lot. And although Utahsino has less damage than Allosinosaurus, it's not by too much. So that part isn't, you don't need to worry too much about that. And speed, Utahsinoraptor is 126 and Allosaurus is 106, which is a very bad speed tier. It's not just that it's slow, it's under 107, which is a problem. But then Allosinosaurus has that 20% crit, and Utahsino only has that 5% crit, so obviously Allosinosaurus has a bit more crit than that, which is pretty good, and it comes handy quite a bit. So, alright, let's go over their moves. So Allosinosaurus's moves is pretty standard for a Tyrannosaurus archetype build. So first has, armor piercing strike, armor piercing impact, and armor piercing rampage, and then instant charge from Sinoceratops. Next we go to Utahsinoraptor. We've got distracting impact, which takes from Utah, critical impact, which takes from Utah, and instant charge from Sino, and low stunning strike for some reason. So, the moves are both kind of bad on both of these dinos. So, for being a Tyrannosaurus archetype, Allosinosaurus only has armor piercing and not defense shattering, which is very problematic because the meta right now, it revolves around shields, not just armor anymore. Shields. The strongest dinos in the meta right now, Stegosaurus, Rajakylo, Ankensho, Dioraja, whatever, all these guys, Tragodistus, they all have shields, which is a really big problem for non-shield breakers. So, although it does armor pierce, like, the dinos that have a bit of armor and don't have shields are basically like just the Ceratopsian hybrids. They have a bit of that, and their problem really isn't their tankiness, it's their control. So that really doesn't help Allosinosaurus a lot, and 106 speed is extremely bad. I'll show you why. So I'm gonna go to the Dino Dex if this can load. Let's see, sort by speed. So looking down here, 106. The three 106 dinos, Concav, Notopato, and Allosino. Concav and Notopato aren't that relevant. The other ones, the ones beneath them are either counter dinos, other, Tyrannosaurus build dinos, and sauropods. And look at 107. 107, you have Stegosaurus, you have Indominus Rex, even Gigaspike, if anyone uses that, which probably doesn't. And then at 108, you have the Diorajasaur. So 106 is a horrible place to be in with speed. Even if you throw it down to 104 and give it a bit more bulk, it would be better than having 106 speed. 106 speed is just not that great. And when looking at Allosinosaurus's bulk, although it does have a 15% damage reduction from its armor against armor piercers, it's, even against non-armor piercers, its HP isn't that great. 4.5k is a lot, but it is not enough to save it from the most prominent damage dealers or even the shield tanks from this meta. For example, Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus does have armor piercing rampage, does a lot of damage. That's 2k per hit, and Allosinosaurus's attacks really can't do too much to it. So that is a problem on its part. And looking at its damage, it has the least of all the Tyrannosaurus archetypes, so that's very unfortunate too. And with the fact that it doesn't armor pierce, so this is a really big problem with Allosinosaurus. And another problem about a Tyrannosaur archetype dinos is that they don't usually survive past turn 2, although Allosinosaurus is an exception. So usually they, the battles goes like this with Tyrannosaurus dinos. So turn 1, the opponent uses a move, and you use impact. Turn 2, they use another move, and then you use rampage, and then you're almost dead. And with your super slow speed, whoever comes in next would just take you out. But Allosinosaurus has one advantage, is that it has instant charge, and after turn 2, it could use instant charge to deal 1.42k damage, which is good, but first it's not armor pierce, it's not defense shatter, and it really doesn't do much more than that. The next turn it still dies. So it's like a Tyrannosaur that doesn't shatter and just gets an extra hit. But although it does have an extra hit, it still doesn't shatter, so this probably doesn't add up in its favor. So Allosinosaurus overall is just a very sad dino. And let's talk about Instant Charge. Instant Charge is quite an underwhelming move. It is probably one of the worst stunning moves in the game. When you compare it to Greater Stunning Impact, Greater Stunning Rampage, it just isn't as good as those two. And it's really debatable which one's better, Greater Stunning Strike or Instant Charge. Instant Charge does have priority, which helps a lot in Allosinosaurus' case. And when we talk about Utahsinoraptor, you'll see that it doesn't help as much. And the Greater Stunning Strike has a 1-turn delay only. Well, Instant Charge has 2. So, we're on pins and needles on which one's better. You could say Instant Charge is better, or you could say Greater Stunning Strike is better. It really depends on the build of the dino. So, this move is probably just bottom of the barrel of the Greater Stunning moves. It just isn't that good. So, moving on to Utahsinoraptor, its move's critical impact isn't that good of a move. It does have a 40% increase for a critical, which is 1.5 times more damage, and itself is a 1.5 times damage. So you really need to bank on that 40% proccing, or else it's just an impact with a 2-turn cooldown, and that is no good. So usually Utahsino users start with Distracting Impact, at least get your opponent's damage reduced a bit, and because of its slow health and bulk, it really can't take too many hits, so it really relies on having Distracting Impact out there to actually help it survive a bit more. And as you can see, its health 3k, armor 1.15. It really can't survive too much things, so Distracting Impact is quite important. But the problem with Distracting Impact is obviously Superiority Strike and Immunity. These two things just really wreck Utahsinoraptor, especially with its low health and armor, which in comparison to Dyloranosaurus has a lot of health, doesn't have any armor, but if it does face against a dino with superiority or immunity, it can survive that first turn and second turn. And the problem with Utahsinoraptor is it sometimes can't survive even a second turn against a superiority strike user. The classic example is against Stegoideus. A 1 level higher Stegoideus can kill Utahsinoraptor on turn 2 after it slows Utahsinoraptor, so Utah can only get 1 hit in on Stegoideus before it dies. So that's extremely unfortunate for Utahsinoraptor, so that's one really big downside to Utahsino. And again, Instant Charge isn't that great on Utahsino, because the best thing about Instant Charge is it has priority. And Utahsino's speed isn't too bad. 126 speed outspeeds a lot of things that obviously Allosino doesn't. So although there are still more faster dinos in the meta, like Indoraptor, that's one where you could use it on, but Instant Charge by itself, by the nature of this move, it really isn't that helpful of a move. It's just a 1-time damage move. It's just 1 turn free damage. 1-time move with a 2-turn cooldown and a 2-turn delay. So it really helps in a pinch sometimes, but that happens not as often as you'd think. And the other move, Lower Stunning Strike, that's whatever. So they used to have Distracting Rampage, which is what made this dino extremely powerful, and also had better stats back then. But now they nerfed its stats and turned its Rampage into Impact. Impact just doesn't do enough with its damage right now, and its low bulk. So it really doesn't do well in the meta at the moment. Utahsinoraptor, its unique hybrid Utah Rhinax is probably one of the worst uniques in the game. So So it's probably not worth going at the moment. It does have some really niche uses. 126 speed, by the way, is it's fast, but it's in a very unfortunate speed tier like Dialorano. Dialorano and Utahsino both 126, and if you go check at the 126 dinos, yeah, you have Dialorano, the Torum, Locutoronix, Utahsino, all at 126. Well, the 128s outspeed it, which is kind of unfortunate. You got 129 Spinosuchus too, which is actually, in my opinion, a really surprisingly decent counter meta dino, Spinosuchus, but we'll talk about that some other day. Puritator 128, Magnapyrator 128, Raptor 128. So it's really unfortunate. Dialorano and Utahsino, the two legendaries in this speed tier, are just there, and Utahsino obviously doesn't survive as well as Dialorano. So even 126, it's fast. It's really fast. It's good, but it's unfortunate. If it could be like one speed higher, then it cleanly beats Dialorano, then it would improve a lot, this dino. But unfortunately it doesn't, and it's in a speed tie with Dialorano, so whoever presses the button faster wins this matchup. Final verdict on which one's better, Allosinosaurus or Utahsinoraptor. It's not too hard to tell because Allosinosaurus really doesn't have a role at the moment. Allosinosaurus's role is supposed to be tank busting, but it doesn't do that. It doesn't tank bust good enough, and it just really loses its role. Utahsinoraptor has more of a clear role, which it doesn't do that role too well, but it does it good enough to justify using it in some situations. So although both of these are kind of bad at the moment, they're really niche picks. They aren't really mainstream picks. They're not that prevalent in the meta, and I know people still use them because they probably overleveled them a lot in the last patch, but unfortunately both of these aren't that good to use at the moment. The meta just really breaks them apart. So my advice is really just to save your Sino DNA. Just don't use it unless you really don't have anything better to use in your team. Then you could consider making Utahsinoraptor, because Allosino has a role. It doesn't do that role well. There are many other dinos that do that role way better than Allosinosaurus. For example, there's Triostronix, which is a really good tank buster. It's faster than Allosino. It defense shatters. It has immunity. It has low base damage though, which is one thing that Allosino has over it, but it does have attack boosting moves, so that isn't too much of a problem. And also Triostronix is easier to obtain than Allosinosaurus, as since Baryonyx is a anytime, or not anytime, nighttime global spawn. It isn't that hard to get. Postometrodon, its components are too rare, so in comparison to Sinoceratops, it's a bit easier to make, and also does the job infinitely better than Allosinosaurus. So I really do not recommend making Allosinosaurus at the moment, and Utahsino only if you really need something at the moment and you can make it. So yeah, my suggestion really is just to save the Sinoceratops DNA and to see whenever next patch, if they buff one or the other. As you see from this patch, when they make balance changes, they are quite drastic changes, so I would keep on to both of these DNAs. So that's it for this comparison of Utahsino and Allosino. Hopefully this kind of helps you out on this on your decision making regarding these two dinos. I know a lot of people like these dinos. There's a lot of love for these two hybrids. Their design is absolutely phenomenal. They're two of the best designs in the game. Their names are really cool too. I especially love Utahsinoraptor's design, but unfortunately the meta isn't too friendly to them. So if you're looking to make one of them, be really careful of your decision. they could be better, like one or the other would be better in the next meta, but we'll really have to wait on them.